Hi, I'm Ryan McEachern, and welcome back to The Dig. On this episode, we have Van Ramsay, Canada Mining and Metals Consulting Leader from Deloitte. We'll be talking to him about the recent publication from Deloitte, Tracking the Trends 2023, titled The Indispensable Role of Mining and Metals. We'll be covering off 3 of the major 10 trends: collaborative innovations, building resilient supply chains, and rethinking external talent pathways. But before we talk to Van, I'm going to throw it over to our producer, Brian, who will give you the 6 and 60.
Thank you very much, Ryan. As we all know, the federal budget was recently released, so we are dedicating this episode 6 and 60 to the budget's commitments to mining, which include a clean technology manufacturing tax credit equal to 30% in new machinery essential for clean technology supply chains, a 15% refundable tax credit for eligible investments in clean electricity generation systems, $500 million over 10 years to the Strategic Innovation Fund to support the development and application of clean technologies. And that same Strategic Innovation Fund will also direct up to $1.5 billion of its existing resources to support projects in sectors including clean technologies, critical minerals, and industrial transformation projects. The budget includes the establishment of a $1.5 billion critical minerals infrastructure fund for energy and transportation projects to unlock priority mineral deposits. And finally, the budget includes supporting loans to Indigenous communities purchasing equity stakes in major projects. We will go into further detail and analysis about the budget on an upcoming episode of The Dig. In the meantime, let's pass things over to Ryan and his discussion with Van Ramsay and Deloitte's Tracking the Trends 2023.
Hi, Van. Glad to have you on The Dig.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Very happy to be here.
Yeah. So, of course, we're talking about your annual publication, Tracking the Trends. This year, you have it rightly titled The Indispensable Role of Mining and Metals. And, we're as you guys properly, put it, we're in this paradox right now where the demand for metals forecasted in the near future here are at historical highs. And yet we have just as much opposition to mining. Couldn't be higher as we're at it. There's lots in this publication as always, and I recommend anybody that's watching to have a good read about it and take time. I always reread it because I'm always picking up nuggets from that. So I'm always appreciative of the publication. But for us, I kind of wanted to dig in from a little more from the supplier lens, of course, and the top 3 challenges or trends, I should say, are they speak to some very high level circular economy, the ESG lens, decarbonization. These are big trends, and we know them. But as you get down, they get a little more granular, and trend number 4, I'd like to kind of kick off with, which is the collaborative innovations. And Van, can you kind of talk to the audience about a little more about where would the small medium-sized enterprise kind of fit? Like, you can maybe talk about the other bigger trends you're seeing in that collaboration with mining companies and suppliers. But it's always that question about the small medium-sized enterprise. Where do they fit in this big picture opportunity?
For sure. Well, I guess there's a couple of things on that, right, Ryan? I'd say, if anything, in this trend, there's probably the biggest opportunity for smaller companies and suppliers. I think, there's oftentimes this perception that the biggest collaboration comes at the highest level, where you've got the major mining companies and the big OEMs coming together to solve these problems. And I would say, that happens for sure. But certainly when we think about it in some of the trends we see, there's even around those bigger collaborations, there's room for small suppliers to come in and augment them and add to them and develop them. So, whether it's a solution around electrification or the move to automation within businesses, there's always small players and suppliers in there that help round those solutions out. So certainly when we've been talking innovation, and it's been a trend of ours for the past 5-10 iterations, we always talk about this notion of ecosystems. And I guess I would just want that point to be clear, that we don't see it always being an ecosystem of major players, right? We think it's an ecosystem of big key players surrounded by just as many and multiples of smaller players that find either niche solutions or specialized skill sets and bring those in a more nimble, agile, cost-effective way than sometimes these big suppliers can.
Right, because some of the things we've seen with some of the challenges is there's the assumption that some of the mining companies say, well, we've done our scan out there technologically and we're not seeing a solution, so now we're going to create this challenge. Yet then we look at it in our ecosystem and we go, well, wait a minute here. We've got people actually have something that's commercialized that could be inputted into that solution. So are you seeing similar kind of trends that way, or is this always kind of start from the ground up?
No, we're seeing a lot of the same things, and I would say, the trend you're pointing out is this whole we're special thing where a lot of mining companies think it's not an exact fit for us. We've got to go build it ourselves. I won't be mean to our industry and say that's a hit. We see this in a lot of industries, right? Where we feel that industry either feels our problem requires such a unique solution or needs to be so custom fit or tailored to that situation. I do think there's a lot more. We should be challenging ourselves as an industry to say, how can we be taking things that are out there already and applying them to, and really questioning and challenging, do we need such a unique, custom, bespoke solution to get to where we go? Because I actually think a lot of times that leads you into a longer scanning, sensing, evaluation process where you're not really getting time to benefits faster. So I'm not sure if that's where you were going, but I do think certainly when you put such a high bar for these specialized solutions to come in, you make it either inefficient and or too challenging for these startups or suppliers to come in and really develop an industry-wide solution, because that's the other side of the coin. When I say when you start to look at mining, it really is a small industry. There's not room for 30, 40 suppliers of the same products to come in. You need to be able to come in and create a solution that is specialized enough, but also has a wide enough application where it creates that opportunity for margin and for building out a business that can really serve the industry.
Right. And it's a trend that we saw with regards to innovation over the years too. And I've spoken to, Carl Weatherall from CMIC on this as well. And we call it the adoption issue. The solutions there, the problems identified, but now it's about how do we actually engineer it into the operational flow sheet. Is that so? I guess what the second part of that question is, are you finding companies are more focused on new build where you can start from scratch versus kind of trying to reverse engineer some of the existing operations?
A bit of both, right? I'd say there's been a learning process. I think that trend was probably more prevalent in the early days of digital transformation when everyone was first, sort of discovering and had big ambitions of a complete transformation. I'd say that's probably scaled down a little bit more. People are finding niche applications of where to apply digital and therefore smaller solutions. And over the years, we've learned how to test and pilot technologies to deploy them a little bit quicker. So I think we're making progress there for sure.
Right. It's just a matter of the kind of that speed to embrace the technology. I believe I was speaking to Cal Ruberg from Tech when he was at Tech, and one of the comments he had mentioned was it's a trust factor too. Once you have the technology interface with the human, trusting the decisions made by some of these platforms has been a bit of a challenge. So that, I guess, that just takes time from a cultural perspective.
Oh, for sure. I'd say there's two sides of that, right? Trust and transparency. When you think of any digital technology, I'd say we would have seen a lot of times putting technology into operations means you're now exposing what's being done on the other end, and people need to be open to that, to use the technology because they know that transparency is there. And then the case that you gave, whereas on the other side, and that information that I'm getting as an input good, can I use it? Can I make a decision on it? So that whole sort of spectrum of being able to allow the conditions to create that transparency in the business, and then to know that the inputs and the data or whatever is coming from it is accurate and can be used to make decisions. That whole sort of trust lens is important on both sides.
Right, right. Well, maybe this is a good segue too, because you mentioned that word transparency, and this kind of goes into kind of trend five, which was the resilient supply chains. And a lot of dialogue and stuff has talked about more from the value chain from output of the mining, extraction down to the end customer, but also, are you seeing trends such as this nearshoring concept? Are you seeing it from an inputs perspective as well? Globally, is this actually happening in mining?
So absolutely, and I would say that's the side that we probably see more of, right? And certainly COVID and all the supply chain challenges over the past couple of years has amplified or at least put a spotlight on that.
Mm.
Um, so this notion of resiliency comes around security of supply, not just of what a battery manufacturer or whatever might be looking for energy transition metals, but certainly from the mining companies, were faced with similar challenges. It might not have been in the news, but everybody had trouble getting product and supplies and inputs that were needed. So that has certainly driven a trend of procurement behaviors that is changing how companies look at it. I would also say there's the shifting products too, right? As we're now looking to shift to electrification and or other processing things, there's a different set of inputs that will be needed. So you'll see new suppliers and new players in the supply chains popping up there as well. And it's certainly starting to change a little bit. The notion of mining was always has been and probably always will be the lowest cost provider wins. And that in many cases drove a lot of supply chain sourcing decisions. I think you're seeing a change in mind shift there too, to at least consider other variables that speak to the resiliency and security of supply on the input side. So definitely
Right,
plays a factor for sure.
right. Yeah. Well, lowest cost option was, I think, based on the assumption of ease of supply as opposed to security of supply. So the business case is pretty obvious when you look at when you have downtime in the
100%.
operation. So
Sure.
yeah, yeah. So it's good. It's good to interesting to see that. The other major trend that I wanted to kind of cover off here was the number seven one, which was kind of really speaking. It's titled "Rethinking the External Talent Pathways." I distilled it down to, I picked a piece of it which was tied to the skills gap, right? We've always seen in mining this, always this deficit of we need more skilled labor moving forward. And of course now it's probably morphing and changing in what you're looking for as well. Um, do you see a role of the supply chain in terms of it being able to be kind of an outsourced answer to those questions, or are you seeing mining companies still wanting to build a core of talent and replace what is looking to retire in the future here?
Yeah, so we could probably do a whole podcast just on this one, Ryan. And when you say are mining companies looking to, I'd say this is where they're probably much more as open to solutions as they are in any area, right? And there's a lot of layers to it when we talk about the demographics of an aging workforce, the challenges of attracting new talent, the issues that'll be related to reskilling or introducing new skill sets into mining with electrification and things like that. So I would say when you put all of those together, mining companies, and not just mining companies, because as we look at the growth that needs to happen in critical minerals, mining jurisdictions and or regions are going to be just as interested in understanding the range of potential solutions to try and address the shortage gap, right, or the skills gap.
Right,
So
right.
that is a big one, and I certainly, when you talk about from a supply side, certainly whether it's bringing training and talent development type solutions, whether it's workforce augmentation or providing models and outsourcing, those sorts of things. I think there's that spectrum of kind of talent related solutions that, like I said, governments, regions, mining companies, suppliers to mining companies would all be interested in trying to figure out, right? Not only will be
Yeah,
interested in figuring out, we'll need to solve. If I think of what some of the biggest challenges will be, set aside permitting and getting mines into production, all those sorts of things, it will be the talent issue, right?
right, right. Exactly. Yeah, it comes back to this huge opportunity that we're seeing, and some of these headwinds that are coming up to our
Yeah,
face pretty close in the industry now.
completely,
Um,
right?
you know, let's those were kind of the three major ones. And again, I really appreciate you kind of expanding on them for our viewers. And I recommend again that they really talk or read the report. Again, there's lots of information in there. And really this is a report that's kind of designed, if I'm correct, for you to provide some guidance to the leaders of the mining companies of, where you see they should kind of help focus what are the important trends for them to kind of pay attention to, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So appreciate the plug for the report. Absolutely. We would love for anybody watching or listening to this to go out and download it and give it a read. But yeah, as far as how it comes together, we poll all of our global colleagues, and there's a writing committee that's put together. And it's not based on going out and surveying mining companies and saying, here's what they're telling us. It's based on things we're seeing. So whether it's the project we're working on, the conversations we're having with clients, we sort of do put this through the lens of what are we seeing out there as far as the trends that are being shaped in terms of what we're being asked to help support or what we're seeing clients asking for help with. So that is the genesis of it. So yeah, we definitely
Okay,
try to
well,
put that
excellent. And I would before we leave here, I have to ask you. We were just it seems like years ago for a lot of people. The PDAC happened in Toronto, and it was kind of back to the business here. There's over 23,000 attendees, close to 24,000. What did you see from the event that you thought were kind of the big nuggets that you got from it?
Yeah, so I'd say on that, first off, a lot of the themes that we've just talked about, right? We hosted 4 workshops at our offices that were all targeted this. One was around just sort of leading transformations, because I do think this energy transition and some of what you see going on with organizations right now, that continues to be front and center. But then we had one focused on talent and the skills gap, one on climate and risk. So very, very similar topics to this. The other things that I would say is there's still very much a challenge in the industry just around financing of projects, access to capital. So how that gap is going to close, because you talked earlier about the demand for metals and the perception for it. Well, that gap gets closed when you can fund, permit, and put these mines in production. So it's not just the perception of mining, it's what comes out of that, the access to capital, and how will you scale the industry. So that seemed to be one that was really a kind of just under the surface sort of issue that's not really being talked about. We certainly, when you think of deal flow alone, we didn't see a lot of the announcements that might be, peppered before and after a PDAC to kind of indicate some of that momentum building. So certainly one to watch for.
Right.
But in the absence of that, absolutely talent, supply chain issues, all big things that we talked about.
Right. Yeah. And that big umbrella, critical minerals, as you mentioned, and we see, to that point, the elephant in the room to us is that permitting timeline. I think every region's looking at it, and the ones that can get it right. I forget who mentioned it. I believe it was Robert Friedland who mentioned, capital is a coward, and it will flow to, it will run away in the sense of if it sees fear. But I think that was a good alarm there. But I think that's a good place to end it. It's definitely exciting times for our industry, and it's really been a pleasure, Van, having you on the dig, and look forward to getting you back here at another future time to discuss where these trends are heading.
Absolutely. Appreciate the invite, Ryan, and happy to come back anytime.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.
And that's it for this episode. I'd like to thank Van Ramsay from Deloitte for being on the dig. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter @Mining Suppliers. Until next time, I'm Ryan McEachern. Take care and stay safe.